Yeah, so again, to kind of briefly summarize for the sake of the recording, the, out of the four immeasurables, first three belong together. Fourth one is equanimity, which we will look at. And more specifically, on the basis of training in loving kindness, then joy, compassion and joy can be understood as the application of that method that you have developed. So if you dwell in, if you live in, right, a state of metta, loving kindness, then when you meet with suffering, whether you're suffering or other people suffering, then you can exercise compassion. And when you meet with happiness, whether yours or others, right, you can now exercise joy. And joy is a type of energy, which will then in turn, right, feed your practice of metta. And so when you practice more of this, you can see how, right, each of the four have implications on the other three. Best for you to discover yourself. But so pay attention to how they kind of balance each other out. They give energy. One gives energy to another. So, for example, if you practice metta in a narrow way, right? And you say, well, when is it narrow? It becomes narrow when you only have metta, right? But in the face of suffering, you're like, hey, it's so happy. And then the person who is suffering, you don't even notice. Then your metta has become kind of not exactly metta anymore. You know? Then this would be more a description of what we say, you are now living in the God realms. You are completely insensitive to that there is suffering in the world. So that's why also metta alone may kind of produce side effects. So you also need to kind of sensitize yourself to the reality of suffering. It's real or real enough. Then if you practice compassion, right, it may, right, we talked about, make you feel so lost, lose your energy. So then joy uplifts. Because when the near enemy, right, the evil twin of compassion comes, it can deplete you. Then you need joy to come rescue, to uplift. So these first three in Western, our kind of non kind of more modern terms, we talk about the head and the heart, right? But actually, in the Buddhist text, we don't divide necessarily into the head and the heart. But in our modern, we think the head is like the thinking part, the heart is the feeling part. And if you want to divide these four into this, then the first three is the heart, now the head. Equanimity is about seeing clearly. So with equanimity, it's then related to what we have already talked about. We've already started looking into that. Equanimity is best developed as a result of understanding how things work. Right? It's about understanding emptiness, understanding dependent arising, then more specifically, the dependent arising of karmic cause and effect, which also tells us, just because you want happiness, you don't want suffering. Just because you want that doesn't mean that can happen if you do not create the causes of happiness and avoid the causes of suffering. So, which also means, when we are practicing these four immeasurables, it's not going to work if you don't understand virtue and non-virtue, or maybe less religiously charged language, virtue, non-virtue. If you prefer, you can also call it skillful and unskillful actions. So what's skillful? What's virtuous? What's skillful and what's virtuous is what will serve as causes of happiness. What's unskillful, what's non-virtuous is what will produce suffering. So in that area of knowing what is skillful, what is not skillful, Buddha gave a simple list, but it covers the basic range of how we may create suffering. So he taught us what is known as the 10 unskillful actions, or this 10 non-virtues. 3 pertaining to physical actions: killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. 4 pertaining to speech actions: deceptive speech, destructive speech, divisive speech, distracted speech. And then 3 pertaining to heart actions, thought action, which is to covet, I want. Then, malicious mind, the mind that seeks to harm, rough mind that causes harm and hurt. Then the last one is called wrong views. The most dangerous wrong view is the wrong view pertaining to cause and effect, such as the view of the belief like there's no such thing as cause and effect. A sub category of that is cause and effect is only about physical matters, which is actually our modern scientific view. So in that view, happiness and suffering is all accidental, type of wrong view. Also wrong view if you think your happiness and suffering is caused by someone else. Another type of wrong view: if I harm others, then my, happiness will increase. So these are the falling under wrong views. So these are the 10 non-virtues, 10 unskillful actions. And of course, with regards to these 10, there are more and more refined or more and more subtle ways in which you can practice not killing, not stealing, not committing sexual misconduct. So you can start with, for example, not killing. Like, don't physically go kill. Then more, take another step further. Don't use your speech to kill, meaning, call someone, hey, can you kill, can you disappear, so-and-so, That has more to do with, don't order, 3 turkeys for New Year celebration, and call the turkey guy, can you kill 3 turkeys for me? So that's the next level of taking this not killing. Like not stealing, at the very least, don't take what is not yours. Then if you want to take it to the next level is don't invest in businesses that are essentially stealing from other people. Those of you who have investment for retirement plans, you need to see where that money is going to. but if you can take care of the first level, right? That's already very good. Then like sexual misconduct, with the baseline, Buddha talked about there are groups of people that you should not get involved in sexually. Those who belong to others, whether by agreement of marriage or they are minors, then they belong to their parents. No. Including those who belong to others, under that category is those who have taken religious vows of celibacy. Then they belong to Buddha, so to say. No, you cannot.
Monks.
some emergency. Sudo kayo membawa, supo kayo membawa, anurato membawa, sarva siddhi sarva karma sujane, citam swayam guru. Sarva tata gata vajrama vajre saman samaya sato. Remember, yeah, the vajra sato on the relative level is reminding us the need to clear karmic obscurations, to clear faults, in order to regain the pristine nature of our minds. And then on the ultimate, it's really reminding us what is the basic bond, the basic samaya, which is that pristine nature. So now back to the 10 non-virtuous and skillful actions. Yeah, so that's about the sexual misconduct. That's what it means, inappropriate. That's the basic sense. People who belong to others. Then, of course, again, from there you can go to more subtle level. Ultimately, pointing to how, as long as we have these cravings, then we are trapped. So then the four of speech, lying, deceptive speech. So actively lying, clearly you are misleading people. Then more subtle is, kind of insinuate, hint, So there are more refined levels to train. Then hurtful, harmful speech, harsh speech, divisive speech, which is causing disharmony through your tongue. Then what I call distracted speech. Normally, is people translate that as gossip. No, sorry, not gossip. Idle speech, pointless. Blah, 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 blah. So, in terms of speech, non-virtuous speech, basically, I think that's the most difficult. Because most of us are pretty good with the first three. I think most of us try to avoid the first three. The fourth one, most of us don't even recognize that it's a problem. We think it's just hanging out and talking. So I've given some examples. Like let's say you are at workplace, or let's say you are in a social gathering, like a Buddhist group or workplace. So two people might be talking, right? And we're talking about someone else who's not here. So maybe me and Sarah, we're talking. And we're talking about Lama. But actually, even if, actually three of us are very good friends. So whatever I say to you, even if it sounds negative about him, but we both know him, Yeah? So it seems innocent, right? But then Veronica happens to walk by and just hear it. She doesn't know him that much. And also don't know how well we know him. Right? How close we are to him. And she walks away with one information, which has no context. We think, as just good friends, just talking. But now you have created a problem. She'll have, even if she doesn't tell someone else in her heart, So actually, it's very subtle, but those are the things that destroy the harmony of groups more than anything. So be careful. Don't think. So that means. Yes. Better not to say,
But it's
test each other.
Stingeries.
Yeah, so that's speech. Then the one for mind, I think we already covered. Yeah? And also with all of these actions, Buddha has further kind of guidance. For example, it says, for example, not so much Buddha, after Buddha. Then, of course, the disciples have to kind of figure out more discussion. So these are more discussions. It's not necessarily what Buddha himself said. So they have some questions, some interesting questions. Because Buddha said, for example, like the karma of killing. He says, there is complete and incomplete karma of killing. Buddha did say that. Buddha did, yes. This, yes. He says there are complete and incomplete actions of karma of killing, for example. So, in order for the karma of killing to be a complete karma of killing, right, the following are necessary. First, something that can be killed exists. You, as the killer, intends to kill. You succeed, and then you take the action of killing. You succeed in killing, and you are satisfied with the success. That is full-blown karma of killing. Then, if all these 5 things are there, then this is the karma of killing. But later, there's some discussions among Buddhists. And they say, what if the 5 is present, but, you intend to kill Edith, but your aim is bad, you end up shooting Melissa? Then what? Interesting question, Because why? That question is also important because the Buddha also says, as for who you kill, the karma is also different. Yes. Who you kill, the karma is also different, not the same. So if you kill a very kind person, the karma is different from if you kill a very unkind person. And also, if you kill out of anger and killing out of greed, the karma is also different. Now, killing out of kindness, you're like, wait, what are you talking about? Well, sometimes that happens. It's also the karma of killing, but the result is different. Okay? So all these are different considerations. And that's why the general principles of karma, it's clear enough. But the exact ways in which it will unfold, which it will manifest, the results, not so easy to completely figure it out. So this whole discussion about karma, how it connects to 4 immeasurables, you cannot, say, how cultivate the 4 immeasurables, and then left and right, up and down. Body, speech, and mind is busy with non-virtues. Yeah, it's like some of these cartel people, very religiously going to church. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. So no amount of you, being free, well, and happy. Meanwhile, your actions, So it has to be cultivated within the context of understanding karma. So in terms of the avoiding of the non-virtues, then the opposite of that is the 10 virtues. Instead of killing, you are promoting life, protecting life. So there are obvious ways of doing that, and then there are more subtle ways of doing it. So less obvious, but you can also do that. It's like not consuming so much resources, so others can have a chance to those resources. Planting trees, recycling things, all that is protecting life. So instead of stealing, right, we give, we share our resources. And so these are the opposite of the 10 virtues, actually, because they are the causes of happiness. So, in one of the teachings, he said, so for some of you, this will be know about this. We talk about the 3 levels of vows. So, the most basic level is what we call individual liberation vows. Then the next level is called the Bodhisattva vow. Then the third level is called Vajrayana Samayas. So whereas different great masters express these 3 vows in slightly different ways, Jinizungan's explanation of the 3 vows is all centered on the 10 virtues and 10 non-virtues. So the individual liberation, the first level, we just explained that. Yourself, you want happiness, you don't want suffering, so you carefully create the causes of happiness and you carefully avoid the causes of suffering. Then, next level, Bodhisattva. What is that? You create the 10 virtues, you avoid the 10 non-virtues, recognizing that this is good for everyone. Now, Vajrayana Samaya. Is it something else? Something different? No. You avoid the 10 non-virtues. You engage in the 10 virtues. Why? Because that's what Buddhas do. Because that is the essence of being a Buddha. So much of Vajrayana talks about like visualizing yourself as a deity, this and that, And so there are instructions like when you are trying to visualize yourself as a deity, when you are trying to develop clear image of yourself as a deity, if you cannot visualize clearly, you should try doing this late at night, or you should try doing it. So there are many like kind of tips, like first you visualize like the third eye of the deity, then you visualize the rest of the eyes, and then the face, and then so there are many different masters who give different tips like this, right? And there I've tried, they're helpful. But when someone asks Judaism, how can I make myself feel, visualize the deity? I am Lord of compassion. I am Buddha of wisdom. He says 10 virtues, 10 non-virtues. Practice that. Then you don't have to try too hard. You can feel I am the Buddha of compassion. He gets right to the heart of the matter. No need for tricks, If your essence is Buddha, your appearance is Buddha. If you forget your essence is Buddha, then you have to do a lot of work. So another way to talk about this is we think, I'm not going to kill, I'm not going to steal, I'm not going to, engage in sexual misconduct. Or you would also think, I'm going to meditate. Why? Because by doing all these things, I will become Buddha. So that's one way of thinking about it. Yeah. But another way to understand why I don't kill, I don't steal, why I meditate, is because that's what Buddhas do. So this is sometimes called. So Vajrayana is said to be the way of practice that takes the result as the path. It's the fruition vehicle. Sometimes it's called that, the result vehicle. But people, think, that means they even like secretly when no one's looking, they buy the deity's hat, they put the hat on, put the deity's clothes. I'm the deity now. There's a special closet where all the deity uniforms are in there. I don't know anyone who actually does that. But in other ways, we are doing that, where we misunderstand what this visualization is. Maybe not so explicit as, having a closet filled with deity uniform. But essentially, we're trying to be deity in that way. Deity, which is Vajrayana language, ordinary language is Buddha, but deity should be a verb, not a noun, because your actions make you a deity. We're too focused on deity as a noun. Then we are trying so desperate to turn what is not deity into deity. No amount of pressing sand will give oil. When we gain more and more understanding of how things are and how things work, it's a lot easier to cultivate upekkha, equanimity. The obvious opposite of equanimity, there are two things actually.
Hay dos cosas.
Attachment and aversion. Get shaken easily. Equanimity is not reacting to. So in our prayer, we say, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. So then the near enemy, what about the evil twin? Indifference. Equanimity can easily turn into indifference, like also apathy, also being careless, like insensitive to other people, kind of like also like becoming very selfish. That's like the near. So interestingly, in the Tibetan language, it's the same word. Indifference and equanimity, same word. Tangnyo. So not give equanimity and not giving a bleep, same word. Don't care. So be careful. It's not that. Because equanimity doesn't come from not caring. Equanimity comes from understanding and not to be shaken by basically a biased mind that says, I prefer this, I don't like that.
What's this?
And this serves as a balance to the other three. Because loving kindness, compassion, and joy are all dealing with, you could say, right? Maximizing happiness, minimizing suffering for yourself and for others. But if you try to do that without equanimity and the wisdom that is behind equanimity, then those three things can lead to a lot of suffering. For example, it's not metta for sure, because in Sanskrit and Bali there's a different word for the the possessive, attached type of love, called pema in Sanskrit, not Tibetan. Tibetan pema is lotus. Here pema is referring to like the love between romantic partners. That's that kind of love. Of course, it's related to metta, yes, but that kind of love is partial by nature. Is partial, and how many cases of suffering has come from that kind of love? The number one cause of murder is domestic, at least in the US. I don't know about Peru. The number one cases of homicide is domestic. People that in one moment you love so much, the next moment you end up killing. So upekkha or upeksha or equanimity is the wisdom that grounds us. So when we cultivate equanimity, so in our prayer, right, it says, free from the bias of attachment and aversion. Attachment to those we like, aversion to those we don't like. Again, right? When we don't have that, then even something as noble, as wonderful, as love, compassion, joy, can actually create something. I love those that are my people. I have compassion for my people. And your people are harming my people, right? that is the basis of so many conflicts, so many wars. Basically, my people are being threatened by your people. Questions?
Preguntas.
Yes. Is abortion in the Buddhist context a non-virtue? Yes. Because Buddha very clearly said life begins at conception. Obviously, this is a hot topic. And insofar as laws and social, rules and all of that, it gets complicated. So, especially in the US, one of our other places, it's become kind of like political identity for or against.
Yeah.
Here as well. Yeah. But if you look at the case of Japan, in Japan it's not illegal. Abortion is not illegal. Most Japanese, on some level, are Buddhists, unless they have become Christian.
Algún nivel.
Muslim. Like, very few. There are Christian Japanese Christians. But otherwise, if it's Japanese who is not Christian, they are to some degree Buddhist. Yeah? Maybe officially they say we are Shinto, whatever, but on some level they are Buddhist. And so on that level, they all understand, no, it's killing. But because there it's not a political issue and it's not an identity issue, more humane approach to this question is Shinto there. My opinion, you don't have such extreme positions. One extreme, right, that wants to say you cannot make it illegal, and that extreme sometimes can go to the point of like abortion is just like like just getting something out of your throat. It's just that, right? That's one extreme. Anyone who has gone through an abortion is emotionally charged. You have to attend to that. So in Japan, they have ways of, they don't make it illegal, but they also don't make it like, oh, it's nothing. So they have a tradition of offering. They call it mizu kuyo. Mizu is water. Kuyo is offering. It's a double meaning. One is part of that ritual involves pouring water. But water is also, in that context, a symbol of the status of the life that was aborted. It's not nothing, but it's not solid, like water life. So I said part of the ritual involves pouring water. Pouring water on what? Statues of baby Buddhas. So a woman who has gotten an abortion will get a particular type of baby Buddha and place it in the temple. It's like a grave for the fetus. So they go regularly to pour water on the statue. They will knit little caps during winter, little baby shirt according to the season. The women will go and leave. Some books have been published. They will leave notes, and often it's the main sentiment is that I'm very sorry I have to do this because the time is not right. So please come back again. Our karma is not. So kindness at the heart of that. Fernando, you have a question?
Yes. Dr. Lai, how about the history of the Bodhisattva who killed a ship's captain who carrying people in a ship? Do you remember?
Yes, of course.
It's another type of cargo?
Yes, of course. Okay, I will. Fernando asks, in one of the past lifetimes of the Buddha, very famous one. This is called the story of Captain Compassion. In that story, it says the Buddha was captain of a ship that was carrying 500 passengers, and these passengers were merchants, kind of jewel, precious stone merchants that had gone on a journey to go purchase gemstones. And as they were returning, one of them has a plot to kill everyone so that he can take all the gems. Then, according to this story, the captain learned about that. But the captain also knows that actually all these merchants, well, except for the one plotting to kill them, are actually bodhisattvas. They're not ordinary beings. They're actually bodhisattvas. So according to this story, this captain found no other way to prevent this from happening except to kill the one who's trying, who has this plan. So kill him. So the normal telling of the story is that because of his compassion, so that he killed. So that's the normal story. In order to, and here's the point, not only not have the bodhisattvas lose their life, but also not to have the person carry the karma of killing 500 bodhisattvas. So then he said, I will take the consequences. So there is consequences. So remember I said earlier, killing out of kindness, but it's still killing. Yeah, so killing out of greed, one kind of karma, one kind of negative karma. Killing out of hatred is another kind of negative karma. Now, in this case, it's killing out of compassion. So he's called Captain Compassion. But Javaji Vincent especially said, but don't think, because he killed out of compassion, then completely there's no negative effect. Because the killing is a negative karma. The compassion is produces another set of consequences. In other words, according to this explanation, if Captain Compassion did not intervene, right, it's fine. Yeah, according to understanding of karma, not stopping someone from creating negative is not your business. Yes. Because karma is direct. Yeah? But if you did that, right, what kind of negative karma would you have? Which is if you say, I'm not going to get involved, right? It's not the karma of killing. It's a different kind of negative karma. It's the not karma of selfishness, which unfolds differently. Again, you see, it goes back to the whole idea of what is reality, what turns up is an embodiment of states of mind. Yeah? But if you think karma as more like a justice system, then you would say, come on, he saved 500 lives. Give him a break. Right? But that's based on the idea that karma is about justice. Or some god, right, created this to keep people protected. And you're like, that's so unfair. But that's not karma. Karma doesn't work like that. Yeah? So Kyoba Judaism said that is a mixed karma. And so he says, for example, not him particularly, but other examples, they say, if you have a handful of quinoa seeds and corn seeds, and you throw it on the ground, what is going to come up? Corn?
No.
Corn? No, you get corn and you get quinoa. There's no corn on. Yeah, they will ripen accordingly. So if it is 30% quinoa seeds, 70% corn, then what comes up is 70% corn, 30% quinoa. You cannot say, but corn is so good. Only corn should come out. No. You put in quinoa seeds, quinoa is going to sprout. There's no hybrid in this case. They don't magically hybrid. And then like a shorter corn with, or quinoa with corn characteristics. No. So virtue manifests as virtue, non-virtue manifests as non-virtue.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Okay, now ask question.
No, I think something is happening with the electricity.
No, it's this. Now it's fine.
Hi.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, okay. Maybe you already answered this. My question. Sorry for all the.
No, go ahead.
My question was, what happens when people who are in law enforcement or in military or in the war zone who have
Oh yes, what happens to law enforcement? What happened to military? What happened to war zone? Doesn't matter. Even Buddha trying to save 500 people. Karma doesn't work like that. What about people in law enforcement, people in military? What about their situation? Their job involves killing. Doesn't matter. Even a great bodhisattva trying to save 500 beings still have to deal with the negative karma that comes from killing. Because if you understand that Buddha's explanation for karma is not about, right, rewards and punishment. It's not about you're a good or bad person. It's about what kinds of minds create what kinds of reality. Yeah, then of course there's a big difference between killing out of hatred and killing out of love. Yes, of course there's a difference. The karma manifests differently. Even the Buddha's own lifetime, we see one very good example. A neighboring king, because there were many kingdoms in the Buddha's time, in that part of Nepal, what's now Nepal, India, that whole area. There were said to be 16 kingdoms. And the Buddha says one kingdom. But a neighboring and more powerful kingdom, that king was like, trying to make a bigger empire. And that king is actually a disciple of the Buddha, Ajatasattu. Actually, he killed his own father. But then later he turned and he followed the Buddha. But that didn't stop him to invade the Buddha's kingdom. Then Buddha knew. So 3 occasions the Buddha stopped the king and his military coming at the border. The Buddha purposely sat there. And then the king stopped him. The Buddha said, please, don't do this. Then they all went back 3 times. The 4th time the Buddha says, nothing else I can do. And in fact, the Shakya clan completely wiped out. Even that, karma is hard. Even the Buddha tried to intervene. There are limits to what we can and cannot do. Karma is like that. Doesn't mean we don't try. We always try to be helpful. So the summary of what you guys did not hear, it's not so much explanation, it's to elaborate saying that this story of Captain Compassion, what I said is just a basic answer, but what Jiden Sungan has to say is a lot more than that. It's really interesting and is related to an episode in the life of Buddha Shakyamuni where he was pierced, his toe, one of his, like I think the big toe, the right big toe, I think, was pierced by a poisonous thorn. And then it got infected and it was very painful. So then there's question about, and apparently that experience is related to the killing of Captain Compassion. So then I joked, but not really joke. I said, this whole set of issues regarding Captain Compassion and the thorn is a really amazingly profound subject that I could easily do a whole week on this topic. Okay, we take a break.
Vamos a tomar un break.
Now it's 4:40. We will start at 5.
A las 5 empezamos, chicos.
Really, as long as the Dalai says, we don't necessarily need to make more Buddhists, but we need to share the Dharma. Khenchen Rinpoche always say, Dharma is not culture. It's not all these cultural things. In fact, he's not at all interested or impressed by statues, tankas, all of that. Very nice. But Dharma. So as we have Dharma in a new place, we have to think about how Dharma can reach people.
Yes.
Yeah. Ourselves, we need also to be fed. So yeah, all the exotic things, it makes us stronger. But if we really want to reach other people, it's not necessarily telling people all these exotic things. Of course, we're not saying also, don't be so rigid. Actually, I also met people who are now in their 80s. Like, I don't know if it's Amanda or somebody. Like, I remember, like, at TMC meeting people older than me, Americans, who said, like, remembering, when they were 13, 14, they don't, they're not really connect to the church they go to. Then they go to like some relative's house, some aunt who has like one Buddha statue. And they just saw and they knew this is it. I'm connected to this. Then 20 years later, they meet a Buddhist teacher. So there is something about, this ritual, but it's not the primary. And so we also don't want to close off because this is past karma, ripening. So many people who said, this is at the time where no internet, Dharma is not so accessible. They say they don't even have the ideas yet. They saw a Buddha statue in some relative's house, and they say, Dad, I know that. But they don't know more than that. Then 20 years later, they meet a Buddhist teacher. Yeah. Joanna's daughter. Hello. Are they in Italy? Joanna?
Giovanna, yes. Giovanna.
Daughter.
Yes. They are in Italy.
Italy.
Yes.
That's why we don't have good pizza at Cusco.
Ya que te has ido a Italia, Giovanna, no hay buena pizza.
Yes, yes, I know. You have to come to Italy to try the pizza.
So, the 4 immeasurables. So, one thing also about equanimity, one of the functions, right, of equanimity is with equanimity, it also helps us, right, to know when not to we say, like bang your head against the wall, trying to solve someone's suffering or your suffering, you know? And instead, redirect your attention to where you can make a difference rather than emotionally getting stuck. So equanimity allows us that, gives us that. So that's another point. So now we come back to, if you remember, we have the Da Hong Bam Ho and the 4 immeasurables with the 4 Buddha activities. So as you remember, it says, for the activity of attracting, magnetizing, or even like controlling, right? The best way to achieve that is by developing stronger and stronger loving kindness. That is the most effective way to attract, to magnetize. Then, the best way to destroy wrathful intervention is with compassion. Then, when we master, says, when we have mastered joy, the third, right? And that is how you achieve the increasing activities, the expanding activities, like the deity of wealth and abundance, Jambala. The last time I was here, we did a Jambala program. To really achieve the result of Jambala, cultivate joy. Without this uplifting energy, you can chant Jambala mantra to the end of time.
Puedes cantar el mantra de
No
Yampai.
growth will happen. The more you practice Jambala, the poorer you'll get, because you become hungry ghosts. According to the Buddha, there is a whole category of hungry ghosts. There are 36 species, according to the Buddha. Among the hungry ghost realm, there are 36 main species. In one species, they are called the great wealth hungry ghosts. Yes, hungry ghosts with great wealth. So that would be the near enemy of Jambala. They have great wealth,
Tiene gran
but
riqueza.
they're always hungry. Because they have no capacity to enjoy that wealth. Actually, in this world, we see a lot of wealthy people that are basically walking around like hungry ghosts. So needy, always feeling not enough. So when we cultivate joy, then growth that way. So this is the syllable, da. Then whole, the 4th mantra syllable is po, da, bo, ba, po. So that is equanimity. Equanimity, when you achieve equanimity, what is the Buddha activity? Pacifying. So when we say pacifying, what are we pacifying? Normal pacifying suffering. So pacify means cool down. Like these days, we know a lot more about, for example, our bodies, right? Suffering mostly from inflammation. And inflammation is what then gives rise to all other kinds of physical health problems. High blood pressure, blood sugar going out of whack, right? It's the inflammation is one of the causes of these other problems. So when we say pacifying, it's anti-inflammatory. So how? What is the Buddha's anti-inflammatory drug? In other words, how can you cool down suffering, the fires of suffering? Equanimity. What does that mean? The heart becoming steady. It's not that pain doesn't turn up anymore, but pain don't cause suffering. It's not that problems won't turn up anymore, but problems won't turn into suffering. Pain and problems. It's just part of being alive, part of being human. But from pain, it gives rise to suffering. Then we lose our balance.
Yes,
That's the opposite of equanimity. Remember, the opposite of equanimity is attachment and aversion. So when pain turns up, immediately, right, it triggers the whole response system of when the nervous system is fight or flight, either fight or run. That's attachment and aversion. But if we have cultivated equanimity, which is based on understanding, then when pain turns up, we can immediately pacify suffering. Then go to your doctor to figure out pain. Go to the doctor and figure out pain. Go to the lawyer and figure out problems. So the way to pacify, the best way to pacify is developing equanimity. So this very brief instruction of Ja, Hong, Bam, Ho, how to achieve these four activities. It's the four immeasurable minds. Rinpoche says, the very essence of Buddhahood is these four immeasurables. Actually, some Buddhist tradition, some interpretation, because there's always different opinions. Some actually say these four immeasurables, they're very good, but they are still part of samsara. And so remember how when we started yesterday, we said the Brahma dwelling? So according to that understanding, if you cultivate any of these four, and then when you die from this lifetime, you can be born in the Brahma realms. And according to Buddhist cosmology, the Brahma realms consist of 16 levels. And 4, 4, 4, 4. Yeah. And so if you have perfected loving kindness, you are born at the top of the first 4. Then if you have perfected compassion, you are at the top of the next 4. And so on and so forth. And you are in the realm of the Brahma beings. So, which led to some Buddhists saying, it's good to cultivate these 4 states as like a insurance. In case you don't get enlightened. Kind of the way we talk about, in Vajrayana we talk about Poa. Yeah. In case you don't get enlightened, you can go to Amitabha's Pure Land, kind of like a insurance policy. So therefore, there are some Buddhist traditions that say actually these 4, at best, temporarily puts you in a good place. But what did Kyoba Rinpoche say? He says, true. If you practice the 4 immeasurables, just as 4 immeasurables, true, it will lead to only these Brahma worlds. However, he says, you practice the 4 immeasurables by considering them as the basis of bodhicitta, then it leads to enlightenment. And so if you practice the 4 immeasurables embraced by the mind, the determination, the vow to achieve Buddhahood for the sake of all beings, for the benefit of all beings, then the 4 immeasurables become causes for Buddha. Especially Kyoba Jigten Sumgana. Again, like to draw some general sketch. I know they're meaningful to some of you, and some of you maybe not. Out there. So, within the Buddhist family, you can say there are various kind of positions held in terms of exactly what is the connection between what we call samsara and what we call nirvana. Between what we call bondage and what we call liberation. Yeah, exactly how are these two connected? Within the Buddhist family, there's actually a range of understanding. between bondage and liberation, between confusion and wisdom. On one end of this spectrum, it says that they are completely different. On one end of this
En un
spectrum
final de este espectro hay algo que está
of positions
de las posiciones
across the Buddhist
ajá,
family,
dentro de la familia búdica.
on this one end, they insist that samsara and nirvana are completely two different things.
Yeah.
Ultimately, everything that is samsara is mistaken. Whatever, even happiness that you talk about in samsaric terms, has nothing to do with nirvana. So you need to draw a very clear line between what is samsara and what is nirvana. So this would be, the people who have this understanding, they especially like the, good kaka, bad kaka, it's all kaka.
Yes,
Good poo, bad poo, it's all poo. And so there they emphasize, you can say, transcendence. Nirvana is transcending everything. On the other side of this spectrum is that samsara and nirvana are not two different things. It's the same reality, experienced completely differently. And as a result of that, even within samsara, there are distorted versions of nirvana. And I would say Kyuba Rinpoche occupies that position. That's why he doesn't say, the four immeasurables, they are samsaric states.
Yes,
At best, they are just insurance policy. In case you don't get enlightened, you go there. And he says, no, it's just lacking one important element, bodhicitta. Once you add that ingredient, now you have a fantastic cake. And so, in another context, he will say, even the happiness in samsara, in confused existence. In fact, what we think of as happiness is not really happiness. What is really happiness in samsara comes from the 10 virtues. So karmic cause and effect is very important. And understanding is also very important. And when you have the right understanding is never in conflict with actions. But sometimes you will come across some Buddhist teachers that will say, the view is the most important. I would say, Kyuba Rinpoche would say, there should be no contradiction between view and action. As long as you still see that there is a tension and a contradiction between view and an action, then either you got your view wrong or you got your action wrong. This is very important. Actually, I can say to you, there are some very famous Buddhist teachers. They're good teachers for sure. And when they say statements like this, they don't mean for us to misunderstand. But we do misunderstand because they do say, for Buddhism, view is more important than behavior. I'm not going to name names. I'm not brave enough to name names. But you just pay attention. I'm not criticizing the person. I'm pointing out that it's easy to misunderstand what that kind of statement means. So don't like think, oh, you're talking about that. Oh, yeah, that's not a good teacher. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you come across, view is most important. Behavior is secondary. Please pause there. And pause. Reflect a little bit. View and behavior always go hand in hand. Just as wisdom has to be developed in tandem with compassion. Once a bird has a wing that is damaged, it cannot fly. Even if it can fly, it takes a lot of effort. But when both wings are functioning equally, so graceful, so peaceful, even just to watch birds flying across. So often we hear this thing about Buddhas have perfected wisdom and compassion, right? You come across statements like this. That means view and behavior completely in agreement now. So there can be no contradiction. No point to even talk about, this is more priority than this. So then in the context of the four immeasurables, the first three pertains to one side. equanimity pertains to the other side. So, in fact, in some pith instructions, they say, yes, of course, you start with loving kindness. But even when you are starting with loving kindness, you need to have some appreciation of equanimity so that you don't develop loving kindness in a biased way. So, that's it. Yay! We're finishing earlier.
What we understand by view?
All the understanding, how things work. I was talking about karma, emptiness,
La visión es
dependent arising. It's part of view. What about? Oh yeah, Jahumamo. Yeah. No, the hook is the hook of loving kindness. Yes. Second dakini is the lasso. Yeah. That's compassion. The lasso of compassion. Yeah. The third dakini is the rope that tied together. Yeah? That is the rope of joy. Yeah? Then the fourth dakini holding the bell, that is the bell of equanimity. Yeah. So the hook deity, the lasso deity, the rope deity, and the bell deity are the four dakinis. But what is the real identity of the four dakinis? It's the four immeasurables.
I have a question.
Mhm.
It's about the four immeasurables. So to practice the immeasurables, we have to use only the logic, the understanding, or there is like the trooper of completion, some kind of practice, a formal practice to do this four things.
No, we start with loving kindness.
Yeah, we started with loving kindness, but
Yes.
thinking and analyzing and the model there, this kind of formal meditation.
Yes. But through reasoning and analysis, you arrive at this conviction. Then you let that grow. So, like the practice of metta, last time I was, 2 times back, we have a whole program of metta. That one is radiating. It's not really thinking. Actually, loving kindness doesn't have a lot of reasoning. The compassion one has reasoning. The loving kindness is just more like a feeling, actually.
Also joy and equanimity.
Yeah, joy and equanimity. Yeah. Equanimity is more about reasoning.
Yes.
Yeah. Like I said, in fact, you cannot find very explicit, oh, this is how you meditate on joy. This is how you meditate on equanimity. But you can find a little bit on this is how you meditate on compassion. And then a lot on this is how you can meditate on, you can cultivate loving kindness. Yeah. So those of you on you can say that I sent in the chat, in the Zoom chat.
It's about the film. ¿No?
Yeah, it's about the documentary. So you can watch and you can share. This is like, it has been ready for about a couple of months and we have not shared widely, but officially today we will share it forward to other people. Yeah. So, as usual, we will end with the dedication, the bodhicitta dedication. So if you have this book, it's on page 53. We'll chant in Tibetan. If you remember, right? It says, excellent and precious bodhicitta. Yeah, where it is not present, may it arise. When it has arisen, may it not decline, but may it grow greater and greater. And if you want, next weekend, get the Genjan Rinpoche giving the bodhicitta vow. You can renew your vow. You can take it for the first time. Gajen Rinpoche, one of our great teachers, said, a truly qualified teacher, qualified to give the bodhicitta vow. Yeah. What is the real qualification? The real qualification is this person will even give bodhicitta vows to someone who is planning to murder them.
Oh,
Otherwise, can individuals who don't have that ability give the bodhisattva vow, give the bodhicitta vow? Yes, and may or may not work. So we requested, or I requested Kinjan Rinpoche to give these vows because I believe he has this quality. So the murderer comes to your house and says, before I murder you, can you give me bodhicitta? And he says, okay, I'll give it to you. Then when I'm done, I know you're going to murder me. Of course,
le puedes matar.
that situation doesn't exist, yeah? But it's telling us the point that is being made, right? The rest of us would try to delay, Tomorrow maybe I can. Anju Sem Cho Pe Ho Mange Man Ge Ge Ba Ya Ba Me Ma Ya Mo Me Ho Pe Wa Sho. For 10 years together, say 5758 Spanish.
Por medio de la bendición de la bendición de la verdad inmutable del Dharma y de la bendición de la encarnación de la sangre inquebrantable, que pueda lograr esta plegaria de aspiración tal como la dedico. Por medio de lo que yo he acumulado en todo el samsara y el nirvana, en los 3 tiempos y por esta raíz de virtud existente, que pueda yo y todos los seres obtener rápidamente la estable, completa, perfecta y preciada iluminación.
58.
Señor del Dharma, consciente que ve todo lo conocible. Trikumpa, que tiene el poder sobre la interdependencia, que sostenga las enseñanzas de Ratnashri, que perduren hasta el fin del samsara. Por medio de la enseñanza y la práctica de escuchar, reflexionar, meditar.
Thank you.
Gracias.